Maybe by round of introduction, while we're letting everyone get set up, I could start on my side. I'm Drew Olson. I'm on the founding team here at Gynger. I run go-to-market. For those of you on today that aren't familiar with Gynger, we're a payments platform with embedded financing, and we help businesses buy and sell technology that they need to grow. So we work with both companies that are buying tech and companies that are selling tech and enabling them with flexible financing along the way. I'd say on my side, I'm super excited to be here today and have some what I would call industry legends, if you will, joining us to talk about the topic of today, talking about managing tech spend and really how to master it in general. But maybe I could start with a brief introduction on each of you, and then you could kind of hop in and give some more here. But collectively across the two of you, you've managed millions of dollars in tech spend. So, first and foremost, Udi, you are the chief evangelist, former CMO at Gong, led the creation of revenue intelligence category, scaled Gong's marketing efforts from 0 to hundreds of millions in revenue. Incredibly impressive. So, I'm honored to have you on today.
Good to be here.
I have a brief note from the team here about little fun items here, if you will. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but not only are you passionate about startups and brands during the day, but I hear that you like whiskey, music, and social activism at night. Is that true?
I do. Not necessarily in that order, though.
On the other hand, Amnon, I'm very close to Amnon. We work closely together. He's the founder and former CTO of the customer data platform Lead Space, and he's actually our current CTO at Gynger. When I asked Amnon for a couple of pointers about his life, he said that his personal life is super boring, but he plays online chess and enjoys classical music and occasionally meets up with Udi at concert halls in SF.
We do.
That's true, and Udi is an amazing pianist by himself, by the way, and humble too. And I'm very happy to be here, and Udi, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Amnon.
Amazing. All right, well, is there anything else that either of you want to add before we kind of set the stage for today and jump into the topic?
Let's dive in.
Let's jump in.
Awesome. All right, great. So, one thing that I like to think about when we're talking about mastering tech spend, one item that's been top of mind for me in thinking about not only scaling Gynger, but other businesses I've been involved in is the fact that, of course, the people and the team that you hire are critical factors for success, right? But one thing that I've definitely noticed over, especially the last few years, is it also depends on the tech that you equip that team with to be a determining factor of your actual success as a business. And top of mind for me, I'd say throughout this whole year, and I would imagine for a lot of the audience today, is that budgets are still tight. There's a need to balance equipping your team with the right tools, but also kind of managing around these budget constraints and kind of giving the finance team what they would like, but also your team themselves what they need to operate. And the reason we have both of you on the call, of course, is that typically from a spend category within an org, I find that CTOs and CMOs tend to be quite high spenders, if you will. The budgets there are quite large.
Never high enough, though.
Well, there we go. That's a perfect topic for us to dig into. But that's why we have both of you, experienced folks in this field, one CTO, one person on the marketing side. There's a lot we can chat about, and you both manage some massive tech budgets. So with that in mind of kind of who you are and where you're talking from an area of expertise, maybe we could jump in and kind of talk about the first topic of today, which for me is all along the lines of, biggest dilemmas or challenges or things that you face on a day-to-day basis, both on the CTO and CMO side. And maybe Udi, I could put you on the floor first, but what I could say is from my POV on the go-to-market side of the house, I'm constantly deciding between whether to allocate funds to investing in a net new marketing program versus doubling down on initiatives that are already in the mix, that are already working, kind of proven themselves. And there's a lot of world of marketing, right? There's so many different components of this. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the biggest dilemmas facing CMOs are today when it comes to managing their budgets.
Yeah, so specifically around tech, there is no shortage of tools. I believe marketing is the largest group of tools. Amnon would know a thing or two about that. Trying to sell to CMOs, there's thousands and thousands of tools, and We can't be looking at all of them. We definitely can't be buying or using all of them. And the bar is getting higher, especially in the last 18 months. Talking to marketers, they're not in the active search mode that we were 2 years ago of, let me see every new shiny object and we'll take a look and we'll figure it out and we'll do a 6 months trial. And if we like it, we might incorporate it. The bar is much, much higher right now. And it involves a lot of around going back to basics while still looking for those unique hacks, a word that I hate, but sometimes used in the space. Let's look for this hack or shortcut that will give us a competitive advantage, even if only for a few months, to figure out something faster. Maybe it's around the intent of our buyers. Maybe it's around our competitive landscape. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a faster lead routing system for our website, whatever that is, or the latest flavor du jour is, of course, generative AI for marketing in all its different formats. But I think the lens that folks are looking at it through right now are, one, is this going to play nice with the rest of my tech stack? Because we now have dozens, if not hundreds of tools per team. At a company of the size of Gong, we have a number of tools that is, I think, close to 2,000 across the company. That's the actual number. And within marketing alone, it's around 100 to 200, depending on who you ask and who owns them. Yeah, there are hundreds and thousands of tools. And so we have to make sure that it plays nice with everything, which means if it needs to feed into Gong or into our CRM or to other systems that we use as hubs for data, can it do that from day one? Because if not, nobody's going to sit and export CSV files and import them and clean them. Like, we're just not going to do that. We're not at the size that can do that. Two, does it meet enterprise-grade security and privacy regulations? We've had to turn down several interesting tools that the team was evaluating because they could not meet the requirements and obligations that we've made to our customers. And any sort of sub-processor, all these boring words, they're not exciting, they're not sexy in any ways, but they become very, very important when you are serving enterprise-grade customers and you sign a lot of really long documents saying what kind of scrutiny you're going to use for every tool that you use. And anyone who has access to some of your sensitive data or your customers' data that can be considered a sub-processor has to meet the same scrutiny and requirements. So I think early startups, they never like thinking about this enterprise security and privacy stuff. It's boring. It's not why, sorry, all the attorneys out there, we love you, doing a great job, but this is not why anyone starts a company thinking, oh, I'm going to solve this security problem. They actually want to serve a certain business function, but then they come up against a brick wall when customers like Gong and even much smaller customers at this point cannot even evaluate them if they can't go through all the loopholes of security and privacy.
Yeah, you bring up a couple of good points there. I'm curious when that turning point came about at Gong, when it went from like, what is the best tool to get this done now? We don't need to think about these things, to the point where it's like, we really need to dig into your security setup, kind of the compliance efforts you have and whatnot.
I think it really happens once you get your first serious enterprise customer. That's the point of no return. I think we had, I can't mention all the names, but LinkedIn is one of our very first enterprise customers, and they're a delight to work with, but they're a global enterprise and they have instances all around the world, and they have sensitive information about their business, about their customers. And as soon as we assume the responsibility of processing and holding and storing that information, that means the same scrutiny applies to every single tool that we work with. And so a lot of tools went out the door. We've had to churn on tools that did not meet requirements that kept getting stringent over time.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Even on that topic, I'm sure this is something that you're familiar with as well, just being on the CTO side of the house. Would you agree that that's a problem that you're running into, maybe at LeadSpace or others, or is there something that's even more of a dilemma that's top of mind for you?
Yeah, I would say that what really keeps me up at night with respect to tech stack is the build versus buy problem. That's really the classic CTO. Every CTO needs to think about it all the time. I need to deliver a product really fast, highest quality, and what CTOs probably not think enough of, but also the cheapest way to do that. And then I need to think about whether I'm hiring the next $100,000 to $200,000 developer, or I take this money and actually buy probably a little bit cheaper platform, but then I need to go through all the overhead of security and integration and all this kind of stuff. And I can definitely say that the rule of thumb or like the trend is that it becomes the not invented here approach is probably not that feasible anymore. Like even big companies like Google and Amazon that used to do everything by themselves, they still do a lot by themselves. They don't build their own CRM anymore. All of them have probably Salesforce or this kind of stuff. So I think with the variety of tools out there, the fact that it's much cheaper to get, especially if you're a startup, you probably want to, at least the things that are not unique to your product, you want to like an integration platform, like something, like ops app that internally for your back office operation. This is the kind of stuff that you probably want to buy and not try to build yourself. And then the second piece is very similar to what Udi is talking about. People, and almost every single day, a developer or a product person will come to me with yet another AI tool that will make their life better. And we need to decide whether we invest and try. So the noise, like dealing with the constant noise of stuff that potentially will work. You don't want to miss out on opportunities to get better, but you also don't want to be not focused and just think about tools versus actually doing your job. So this is definitely another big part of it.
You made a comment there that resonates with me a lot. I think it's all tied together with build versus buy, but more specifically your call out of the noise. What's interesting on this, and we could save the full deep dive for another conversation, but I actually recently gave a talk at one of our investors summits about a month or two ago, and the whole topic of the talk was noise versus opportunity. And this is, of course, more from a go-to-market standpoint and selling, but being able to sift through noise to identify opportunity and separate the two so that you're able to stay focused and execute and move quickly. And for me, it kind of like ties into what you're saying here. And I'd love to double click on that, actually, Amnon. Maybe put you on the spot, but how do you decide between what to buy versus what to build, but more specifically, like avoiding all of the noise of all these different tools, all these different things that you can consider in your stack and how it all ties together?
Yeah, I'd probably say something that Udi will agree with. I'm curious to hear because I actually sold to Udi once something, so I see how it works. But the bottom-up approach is really what I will religiously, vote for. So someone wants to bring in a tool. So first we need to vet it out to see that it has a basis kind of case. It's relevant. It can be interesting. To be honest, we need to check if it's done in good faith because everyone has an uncle is on the board of a company somewhere and trying to reach CTOs in different places and sell them stuff. So I need to make sure that it's real. It's not we're just helping a friend. And then we'll just try it with one user or two users and see if people really use it. And then it will start growing by itself. And it's like an evolutionary process, like almost every other thing that you'll do in a very resource constrained environment. You don't want to jump all in, over invest and all that. I have a really good example of like my lead engineer bringing in a tool called LogRocket. Maybe some familiar with it. Very geeky thing that monitors, front-end sessions so we can find issues there. So very techie engineering kind of thing. And then over time, we found that the entire sales team actually trying to log into LogRocket because they actually see their client sessions and can see what they're actually doing in the app. And then we found ourselves investing much more in this tool. So this is one little example, and there's many more examples of the next gen AI thing that we ended up trying and never using, and then it just died out by itself. So bottom-up approach, that's how we'll deal with the noise.
Do you find any times in which you take the inverse approach of not going bottom up, but rather going top down and kind of implementing a tool because it's what the team needs, but not necessarily something that garnered that organic interest and utilization?
Almost never, not like only if I really have to, because I OEM a product that is a core to our offering, and there's no way back. So it's like either you're all in or not. Then we'll do a long process of checking everything before, but I'll avoid it as much as I can, just like I avoid any engineering project that I'll avoid any long-term engineering project if I can. Always will break it into small wins until I can prove the case and let it grow by itself.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like the overarching umbrella around this topic is really like doubling down on the decision-making process. And Amnon, for you, taking that bottoms-up approach to make sure that it's almost like starting small, right? Like crawl, walk, run, which is a favorite saying of mine before you go large scale. Udi, from the marketing side of the house, how do you think about that? Is that a similar decision-making process you have for deciding on tools that you need, or have you found it opposite in your world?
I wouldn't say it's opposite. So there's some similarities with what Amnon mentioned, but I'll say there are a few paths that a new tool acquisition can take. First, the first question that we ask, and if we don't ask it internally as we should, then someone in the procurement trail will ask us, what business goal does this tool serve? What is this going to help us do more of? Is it going to help you exceed your demand gen goal? Is it going to turn around creatives faster? Is it going to help us reach more customers or retain more customers? We have strategic goals, and everyone's KPIs are tied to those goals. The way we do it, we have like 3 or 4 top goals at the company, and then each function has their 3 to 5 goals that are derived from those, and then it trickles down all the way to the individuals. When someone comes to ask for a tool, that's going to be the first question. Like, what is this going to help you do that is in your important KPIs? Like, is it going to help you have a better night's sleep? Well, if that's not in your KPIs, maybe we don't need that. I mean, you probably won't go ask for it. So it's going to have to tie into a business priority. That's number one. And then I would say there are 2 approaches which roughly correlate to what Amnon called top down and bottoms up. So bottoms up is if someone in the digital marketing team needs a specific A/B testing tool, she's the person who knows best about that. And after she's evaluated the 2 or 3 tools and it's clearly tied to her goal of optimizing the website's conversion rate, will help streamline that process up. And she's the one to ultimately make the decision, as long as it hits our criteria of, again, privacy and security and integrates with all the other systems we need it to. Sometimes it will be top down and we can't really pilot it on a single person. Good examples of that would be a CRM, a revenue intelligence system, a payroll system. Like, nobody's going to test it in a pilot user because it's meaningless unless you roll it out to the entire organization. If you're doing an employee engagement system, HR is going to decide for everyone and they're going to mandate it. So sometimes that is how we do it. And I think that also brings up a interesting related point, which is ROI of these tools. So some tools can and should be measured through the ROI lens. For example, if Christine bought her A/B testing tool for the website, and that's supposed to help her achieve her goal of improving website conversion, 6 months after using it, we should be able to see some impact of the tool, and we should be able to look at it through that lens of ROI. Did it improve the website conversion? By how much? Is that enough? So let's continue. If it's not enough, maybe there's a better tool that'll help us do that. But then other tools, especially if you look at CRM, for example, or some HR systems, payroll systems, they don't have ROI. How do you measure ROI on that? It's become a part of the plumbing, a part of the cost of doing business. I want to assume that most of us on this webinar have Wi-Fi and modern plumbing and electricity at home. We probably can't imagine living without them, but we can't measure their ROI. And we don't question ourselves on their ROI. Like, okay, I'm putting money on this. What ROI am I getting from it? You get to flush your toilet. That's the ROI. It's just part of modern day living, and it's part of the cost of doing business. That's the equivalent in organizations. And as a side comment on that, I think every tool wants to end up in that category of being part of the plumbing, as non-sexy as that sounds. You want to become part of the plumbing. The people just stop questioning the ROI and stop looking at you through that lens of justify your existence, but rather it's a must-have that we need you. And CRM is in that category. Email automation for marketers in that category. Payroll is in that category. I could keep going.
Yeah, totally. CRM was the first one that came to mind as you were talking through this, and it makes me think of like the picks and shovels model, right? If you build product that sits behind the scenes and just powers everything and almost works silently, then there's a really powerful model there that everyone will really utilize on it.
I mean, it's true on the global scale. If you look at the Fortune 50 or look at the list of the Fortune list of most wealthy people in the world. Those companies and individuals make their money from what most of us would consider the most boring, mundane things like energy, oil, gas, distribution, mining. They become part of the plumbing. They become part of the infrastructure that we all live by and live in. And the money just flows very easily into those areas. Absolutely.
There are a couple points that you brought up as you were talking through that I'd love to dig into a layer deeper. One, first and foremost for me, is procurement, right? So I'm kind of thinking through this whole flow here, right? Of how do you even identify and decide on what tools make sense? And there's the bottom up approach, top down approach. There's the infrastructure, the plumbing that sits behind everything. But regardless of the category, when you make that decision that you do want to make the investment and move forward, the whole world of procurement comes front and center for me. So I think it would be beneficial for everyone in this audience, myself included. Maybe we can extract a couple tactical tips of going through that procurement process, right? Regardless of what the category is. So maybe we could use an example here. And Udi, since you're talking through it, I could put you on the spot. But let's decide you've decided on a new marketing automation tool, or X tool, whatever that might be. Could you walk us through what that procurement process would look like from your side of things, really from the beginning towards the end, and who would you involve, and maybe just little things that you've learned along the way that the audience can benefit from?
So obviously this process evolves as the company grows. I remember the good old days when I was sitting with the CEO in the same tiny WeWork office and like, hey, Amit, we should get this email automation tool, which I literally bought on my first day. He was like, okay, just swipe your credit card and expense it. And that was it. That's how I bought my first email automation tool. Today, that process would take weeks, if not months, go through at least a dozen people in the company and a couple of systems that make sure that we have a budget line item for this, and that IT and security and legal did their pass over it. And then finance looks through it like, is this in the budget or something extra, and explain the ROI to me and all those fun questions. So it really changes as the company grows. And I think a lot of that scrutiny is needed and is good, because otherwise things just quickly get out of hands. As I mentioned, I mean, we probably have 2 tools per employee in the company, which if you think about it is craziness, absolutely craziness. There's 2 tools for each employee in the company. So things do quickly get out of hand. So today we start by saying, yes, does this roll up into someone's KPI that rolls up into a higher business goal? If it does, we put it in whatever procurement system we're using that year, and then it goes through a chain of approval. So first, internally, it goes through the people who own that budget line item. So within marketing, usually the tech stack is owned by marketing operations. In some companies, there's a combined RevOps function. At Gong, they are separated, marketing ops and RevOps. So that'll go through marketing ops. And then we have, again, because of our size, we have a finance business partner dedicated to the marketing team. So this wonderful woman, Katie, she works with our team, and she knows every budget line item, and there are many of them in the marketing budget. And if she sees that this is within our budget and meets her criteria, then she will streamline it for us with procurement and finance. But she's also there to identify any early problems that would prevent that from going smoothly in procurement and finance. And she'll stop us and say, like, wait, we budgeted $10K for this. Why are you asking for a $20K approval here? How can we spread this out or get payment terms or do something that will make it easier for her to help us streamline it through finance? And then theoretically, it has to go through procurement and finance and there, but it is not uncommon for things to get stuck at every single stage of that process. And I stopped counting the number of calls I got from the CFO after it went through a dozen of our people combined. At that point, it should have been just a formality. I get a call from the CFO. Why is your team asking to buy this? Explain this to me. So even the best designed process is bound to fail at some point.
That has to be a fun call to manage.
Always. I mean, you never know with him, because our beloved CFO, Tim, he has called me a couple of times with great news, like, hey, we've got, this is a real call. Like, we've had so much revenue this quarter. We want to balance that with some higher investments. We've got 2 weeks left of the quarter. Can you spend $300,000 on marketing before end of quarter to help us balance things out? I'm like, yeah, I think I can do that. So, I do get those calls as well. It's not
I'm
all bad
wondering,
news.
I'm wondering how many AEs are on the call today. Just taking a note of that, putting you on their outreach Rolodex.
It's been known to happen. It's been known to happen.
Oh, that's funny. Maybe, I guess I'm curious how involved you are within procurement on the vendor facing side of things, if that's something that you typically get pulled into, or if there's a team or someone on your team manages that. But even the process of going through procurement with the vendor to align on the final price, identify the right composition of seats or usage or kind of features that make sense for you. Is that something you're involved in? And if so, maybe tips there would be helpful as well.
I would say you want to leave the least amount of negotiation necessary to procurement, and you want to be very upfront with your vendors. And so vendors, you should expect this from your buyers. Like, ask your buyers, is procurement going to be twisting my arm? If so, like, what is their goal? Some procurement teams are compensated on lowering everything by at least 15 or 20%. If that's what they're going to do to me, I'm going to save my best price as a vendor for procurement. I'm not going to give it to you, the business buyer, because if I'm giving you my best price now, once it gets to procurement, they're going to be beating the heck out of me for another 20%, then I can't make that deal happen. So try to get clarity from your buyer, and they should be honest about what their procurement process looks like, what is going to be left to procurement to do. But I would say, short of the final price and terms, things like how many licenses you actually need, the last thing you want to do is discuss that with procurement. You want to close that with the business function by showing them the value and having them agree and demand on a certain number of licenses that they need. I mean, it sounds ridiculous that procurement would decide which people need a license to our email automation system. They have no idea like why Vince and Ops and Rachel and Kyle need licenses and why Christine can live without one. That's something that, as a vendor trying to sell the organization, you should absolutely cement with your business buyer so that they don't leave any wiggle room for those sort of decisions once they get to procurement. Procurement should really be about crossing your T's and dotting your I's, and like, can I get a better price for a 2-year deal? And can I, get better payment terms and things like that? And of course, agreeing on the actual price. But anything that the business should have a say on should be closed with the business and should arrive at procurement as a package with a bow on top of it that procurement is not expected to open up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that's insightful in a lot of different areas, and takeaways for me on that. One being the transparency of really aligning on what you need directly with you as the business person going through the procurement process with your vendor. But I think there's also an element of trust and transparency, right? That you're able to share, like, this is the process that you are going to go through as the seller, and we're developing that rapport so I can equip you for that. And one, I trust you that you're pricing this appropriately, and you trust me that I'm giving you insight into what the process looks like from here.
And I think that's what a modern sales process should look like. I mean, the vendor, which is also a problematic verb, but people know what I mean. The vendor, the seller has to do a good job of uncovering what that buying process looks like. And again, the larger your customer is, the more complex that is, the more people are involved. You need to understand the internal dynamics. You need to get enough buy-in high enough up in the organizational food chain so that procurement is not the one that can stop that. Here's a good example. As we're selling Gong to multiple large enterprises, and our typical team that buys Gong is the sales team. But we've noticed that we can streamline things if we get a meeting with the CMO, if we can get a meeting with the VP of RevOps, get all of them excited about Gong. And then by the time that hits procurement, we've got half of the executive team drooling, waiting for Gong to be across the finish line, that procurement is less likely to give them a hard time about it. If you sell something that has a clear ROI or can help any function in the organization in the relationship with finance, if you could get the CFO's eye on this and get them excited before it even goes to procurement, they're not going to give you a hard time in procurement. That team reports to the CFO usually. So there are many ways of getting around that. And as a business buyer, of course, it is in my interest to educate anyone whose product or service I'm trying to buy. I will educate them on our buying process because I want them to make it across the finish line. It's not a war. I'm not trying to get them stopped by procurement. I actually want this yesterday. I want to help them get past procurement as fast as I can. And I will help them by explaining everything I need to procurement. I will cross my T's and dot my I's in all the systems. You want to make this work. So again, if you're being stopped by procurement, someone didn't do their job before that, either the seller or the buyer.
Yeah, Udi, it sounds extremely fun to work for a bigger company, the way you describe it.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, I can add that as someone who today is I'm making the decision, I'm the procurement, almost I'm the CFO too in a sense. Yeah, I'll really emphasize and so before I go there, just going back to the build versus buy decision, I put our faith in some vendors, like they are in charge of core component of my product, and I really put a lot of focus, a lot of time, just like as sometimes like I think how I manage my team. I'm a vendor manager as well, so it becomes a huge part of my job, I think. Which I think many CTOs don't think this way. They just, they want to build software, they hire people, they build their software. But again, more and more things today are being OEM because so you really need to put a lot of thought about how you manage your vendors or the core vendors, and I study the usage metrics. I really prepared every time talking to the vendors, and I really build a relationship with them. And doing all the stuff Udi mentioned, but one of the things I'm always doing is making sure the vendor knows that we can, that I can replace them. It's a really important piece. I always know the 2 or 3 other alternatives, and I'm honest about it with myself too. If the vendor cannot deliver, then I'll go with a different alternative. Sometimes there's a switching cost. Sometimes I need to bluff a little bit. But I always want to keep those options. And I found that when you do that and you're extremely and brutally honest with your vendors, it just puts all of the incentives in the right place. Like they won't screw you up in price because they know they can be outpriced. They give you the better service. They will really try to understand what you want. So that's my approach here. And maybe if some of the vendors are listening to that, I hope they think I'm nice to them and not just trying to bully them. But this is really, really helpful. Again, I think we have really, really fruitful relationship with some of our vendors because of that.
No, that's great. I think one thing that's been kind of peppered throughout the responses from both you and Udi is the CFO and the finance suite. And Udi, this is something you mentioned earlier on, but I think it's also come up a couple times here. And I think I'd say it's something I have to ask. And, there's I kind of think of it as like an internal battle, even though it's really not, but the internal battle of like what you either as a CTO, CMO, whatever part of the business function you're running, managing and partnering with the finance suite. I'm curious from your perspective, how do you manage that battle or manage that relationship to make sure that the CFO finance team is happy. They understand you're making smart, reasonable decisions and using your judgment to use your budget wisely, but also to the points earlier of like, the exact product you need and this is why you need it and just going for that as opposed to just talking about numbers at the end of the day. So I'll leave it to either of you if you have something that comes to mind, but I'd love to dig into that topic.
Yeah, a few quick thoughts. I don't know if it's the silver bullet answer to your question, but a few quick thoughts. First, realize that we all have a job in the organization, and CFOs are kind of paid to be grumpy and count beans. That's what they do. And if you realize that and don't give them a hard time about it and take everything in stride, it'll be easier to work with them. 2, develop a real relationship with them. Understand they're compensated for certain things, just like the guy in procurement might be compensated for lowering every vendor's price by 15%. So that's what they have to do. They're not trying to be difficult. They're trying to make their OTE. Once you understand that and put yourself in their shoes, think, okay, what would make it super easy for them to just stamp this and move it along? Then you learn how to work better with them. Be transparent with your CFO. Explain why you need something and why it's helping you hit your goals, why it's within the budget that supposedly you did a good job of planning for in advance. If every purchase becomes a fire drill, then you're doing something wrong, right? I recently wrote a post about how every one of my budgets included a line item for marketing experiments, which I roughly allocated 10% of my program's budget for. And that gave me some wiggle room because I'm always going to discover a new channel, a new tool, a new event that I did not know about in November. but I learned about in May and I want to buy it. So I have a budget for it because I set aside a budget for marketing experiments. And CFOs understand, the good ones, they understand that reality and they will allow for it. And within reason, they will go with you on that. They will work with you on that. If every single tool that you buy or every purchase you make is breaking the budget, then someone did a bad job in creating that budget in the first place. And there might be some learnings for next year's budget. So to summarize, do a really good job of planning the budget so there's few surprises as needed. Understand what your CFO's job is, and for that matter, what every business partner on the way is, including procurement. They're not your enemy. They're on the same side. They will succeed if your company succeeds, but they are measured in a slightly different way than you might be as a marketer or as a CTO. Understand what makes them tick. Build a relationship. Go have that drink with them after an offsite. Some of them are very, very interesting people.
CFOs don't go for drinks, I think.
Mine does.
Yeah.
Mine does.
Okay. Yeah. So building on what Udi said, I've been in situation where the CFO's main job or main concern is how they pay the salaries next month, and probably there's a lot of companies out there that are in this situation. Like the number one thing is they're thinking about right now is cash flow. And then they have this huge from line item of tech spend that probably marketing they can understand a little bit, but tech spend, the CTO will always say it's mission critical to run the product. And it's really, really hard for them to really rationalize and double click on that and really control this huge line item of spend. And yes, you need to be as much as transparent as you can and explain. And by the way, this spend is also fluctuating all the time, because AWS can send you sometimes $1 million deal that you didn't expect, or you use this API and it's a usage based. So this is reality, I think, in many, many companies, including companies I've been part of. And what I found myself doing to satisfy the CFO, but it's for the sake of the company's success, is really try to get as much credit as I can from the vendor, meaning what Udi mentioned, payment terms. It's much more important today than people may think. Because obviously the vendors on the other side, they also need to pay their salaries next month. So everyone now is in a cash crunch, or many companies cash crunch situation. And I found myself, for example, in the lead space, like I had 50 or 60 different vendors, but it was half of them I was spending time on negotiating payment terms. I'm not a sales guy, so I don't like negotiating. It's not fun for me, but I had to do all of these things. And full transparency, this is why I'm so excited. Was so excited to join Gynger, because I found the actual Gynger kind of eliminates this whole problem altogether. We're building a very smart mediator that can just come in and just offer payment terms to the buyer, and the seller we get everything up front. Boom, problem solved. The CFO is happy, the vendor is happy, and you don't wait. And the CTO is extremely happy because I don't need to waste all of my time negotiating and dealing with that instead of building the product. And so whether you use the Gynger to finance and use payment, get payment terms, better credit for what you buy, or you negotiate yourself, get the credit from the vendors. I think these days it's something that CTOs, CIOs should be much, much, much more aware of, and understand the CFO side of the house, which again, cash is the king probably, is true more than ever today.
Yeah, I think that's a good topic. And I found the same too in vendors that I've worked with, that there are sometimes limitations around what you can do around pricing, whether it's per seat or usage. But if you're looking for middle ground, and coming back to Udi's point earlier, it's being transparent of like, there are things that we're trying to optimize for. I think if you're upfront about optimizing for one or the other, there are options where you can make everyone happy. And that's the end goal, right? Like, you want to get the tool that your team needs. You want to make your CFO happy so they approve it. And you want to have a good relationship with the vendor so you can build a strong partnership. I think that's the key to it. And I think on that topic in general, it's a pretty clean segue into the final topic that I wanted to talk about today with you both. And it comes back to ROI. Again, this is something that's been mentioned a few times. Udi brought it up earlier in our chat, but I think it's, kind of talking through the whole flow of today. It's really like not only starting around how do you decide, what's your decision-making framework for what tools you should use and what tech you should spend on, through to how do you find the right vendor, take them through the procurement process, how do you work closely and in partnership with your finance team and your CFO and kind of make sure they're all on board. But it really comes back to that last final item of, okay, we've gotten thumbs up across the board. We're now live. Everything's going. How do you go about actually justifying the price tag post signing that deal, post bringing on the tool, to show ROI and show that this was the right investment? So at the end of the day, CFO is going to be the decision maker on maybe next year's renewal, or do they give the thumb up or thumbs down? So how do you guys handle that?
I'll let Udi say it, because my simple answer is that there's no simple answer. And because I'm working in smaller companies, I don't need to give an answer. Nobody asked me about ROI. I definitely try to ask ourselves, but there's no real simple answer in the development land, like how you measure productivity for developers and products. So, and I have my internal set of tools, but I'm curious to hear Udi think about it. Also, I sold to B2B marketing, and I know how hard it is for you as a CFO as well. I know this process well, so I'm curious to hear your.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the plumbing tools that kind of sit below everything, right? That are hard to justify, but those tend to come with quite large price tags too.
To quote my beloved CFO Tim, excuse me, he says, "Talk to me about the R. Everybody talks to me about the I in ROI. Nobody talks to me about the R. So show me the return on the investment, just not just how much investment you need." And here's my approach. You could look at it both top down and bottoms up. So tops down, I'll go for a simple example for a tool that is hard to show inherent ROI. Let's take a email marketing tool like a Marketo or an Eloqua or an HubSpot. So I cannot show you the direct ROI on that tool, but I can explain it from a tops down approach. I would do something like this. I would say, not that anyone's asking me, because at this point, unless the CFO has been living in a cave, they know that every marketing team needs a marketing automation tool. But if I had to explain it, I would explain it this way. Look, I just signed up for providing 10,000 sales qualified opportunities this quarter. That's my goal. I believe that 6,000 of those, or I plan 6,000 of those, are going to come from our email program. To run our email program, I need a marketing automation system. There is no way to run the email program without an email automation system. This is how modern email marketing works. Do we want those 6,000 sales qualified leads? Yes, I need an email marketing automation system. That's how I would explain it from a tops-down approach, where I tie that system into the business goal that I signed up for, that universally is agreed upon in the company, and I can't achieve it, or I can't achieve it as well without that. That's a tops-down approach. A bottoms-up approach would be, okay, we are delivering our 6,000 SQLs. I'll continue with that same example. I think we could deliver 8,000. And there's this new tool, generative AI, that connects to our email automation system that I believe, claiming based on what they showed me and what they claim, that they can improve our productivity by 25%. I want to try it for 6 months. And I think we'll all agree, if this can improve by 25% the email productivity, since that's a huge source of demand gen for us, then we should probably do this. So that's how I would approach it from bottoms up approach. I'll tell you which tools don't lend themselves to good explanation, and definitely are very difficult to buy at times like this, when it's all this internal infrastructure and comfort stuff. So the creative team wants this new expensive tool for better organizing their folders of creative assets, or someone in ops wants this system that's going to save them some time in uploading and downloading CSV files. Okay, how much time are they actually spending on it? Is it a 600-hour project that we're going to reduce to 6? Or is this going to save someone an hour a week? If that's the ROI, you're not buying this right now. Just let them do the hour of work. So you've got to also not be tone deaf to the times that you're in, and how is the company doing and how is the market doing. When everyone was doing brilliantly, budgets were flowing and nobody scrutinized everything too much. And this last 18 months has been a shakeout period for many companies that were in those borderline nice to have buckets, and they got cut out because if someone can replace that tool with an hour's work a week, let's go do the hour's work right now. But if it's tying into 60% of your ability to hit target, we're not going to replace that. It's become part of the plumbing. Totally.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think about this past year. You have a good point of lots of different budgets were cut in different areas. I know that marketing was one place where there were some tightening of the belt, if you will, in terms of like, where can we minimize spend? And thinking of your comment earlier, which I love, is the R in ROI, right? Thinking about those constraints coming into place with economic uncertainty or kind of macro events, have you been in positions where the I was more of the focus? And I mean that by saying there is this tool that can accomplish X, right? The 6,000 marketing qualified leads perhaps, but there are two tools that we can choose from, one being much more expensive and one being much more affordable. Has that been a conversation that you've had to navigate internally of why you're going with the higher priced item, even though they could both arguably be pointed at the same KPI?
100%. We want to see the best bang for our buck, which is the colloquial way of saying ROI. You see that a lot with data platforms, right? If you're looking to buy data, there's so many vendors out there for buying account and contact and intent data. And they vary greatly in their scope, in their accuracy, in their specialties. When you look at geographies and industry and seniority, and does this one have better emails, but that one has different mobile numbers? And it's going to be very hard to compare. There is no apples to apples in that field. And you've got to do some extensive testing of 2, 3, 5 tools, and then come up with the results and say, hey, we could spend $10,000 on this one, but we're only getting 50% of the accuracy that we need. Here, we're going to spend twice as much, but we're getting 80% of the accuracy, and that's actually going to get us to target much faster. So I recommend we go with the more expensive tool. And any logical CFO, and they tend to be logical, will accept that.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the value in running those little pilots to actually get a test feel for it, right? To help you contextualize the price you're paying.
That pilot approach I've used not just for tech stack, but for choosing marketing channels and events and other things. I try to design a pilot that is the smallest investment I can make that is still large enough to be indicative of whether this could be helpful to my team and its goals. So if I gave you $50 to go spend on Google AdWords, that would be a small investment. It's not big enough to be indicative of any future success. I mean, you'd be done with that before we finish this webinar. So you need something probably to the tune of $5,000 to start exploring even a narrow campaign for a certain audience to see what works. So you've got to be able to design those and do what is the smallest investment I can make so I'm not throwing money out the window, and I can pause and evaluate after this pilot, but it has to be big enough to be indicative. Otherwise, just don't do it at all.
That's a good call out. Amnon, it looked like you were going to say something earlier. Would you agree?
I just really enjoyed listening to Udi because it sounds like, at least you make it sound like you're looking for the truth, and if the truth is hard to find, you're not just making it up. And with ROI, I work. Don't be offended, but usually it's the CMOs or the sales folks are just selling it internally. They're just using pseudo data and pseudo facts to sell ROI internally just because they really want to do something. And they're not investing enough time to get to the bottom of the truth. Is this really driving our business? Is this really worth the investment? And I think that's what makes Udi a great CMO. And I had the chance to kind of see you in action a little bit, and in the fluffy CMO land, when truth is really, really, and like goals and truth and attribution is really hard to do. Still try and still making the efforts to call truth from bullshit. Sorry for my term and my words here, but is a critical piece in like this ROI big question, because again, it's not simple. It's not something you can just brush through usually.
No, that's great. I mean, I'd say this has been valuable for me for sure. I think I'm learning a lot. I hope the audience here is as well. And with about 10 minutes or so left, maybe this is a good point for us to turn it open to some Q&A. That works for the both of you. You can see what the audience has. So one question we have here. Somebody asked if Amnon is a good salesman.
I think you sold us once or twice, didn't you?
I'll attest on myself. Like being this like CTO geek kind of thing, and coming in and just talking about technology, and people buy into it and they think you're very truthful. And then sometimes I became better than the sales team because like the clients actually believe. So for all of the companies out there, send your CTOs to sell your products, especially if these are innovative ones. It may work, it may not. I had some successful deals on that.
I can vouch for Amnon. He's a great salesman. Next question we have is, how do you ensure that your teams are not only up to date, but also adaptable and agile? I would imagine this is around the tech investments you're making and kind of deciding on if you want to go with a certain tool or not.
Amnon, you want
For
to
me,
take
it's
a
a
stab at that?
culture. Yeah, for me, it's my team knows that it's like it's a almost a religion. Be agile, short, sprints, doubt, have a vision, have a strategy, but be extremely practical about what you're doing right now and extremely thoughtful about every little step. So it's not just about what you buy, it's about everything we do. It's such an unknown, such a big unknown world that we're living in and trying to do something new nobody else did before. So humility, all those things that the great entrepreneurs are saying in those podcasts, in their books, I sign up for that. That's at least my 20 something years building stuff. I see that the reality will be stronger than anything you think. So it's a religion to be agile, adaptable, but always have your North Star, your mission, know where you're going. At the grand scheme.
I agree. It's a cultural mindset more than anything else. I mean, there's enough data out there at this point to show that the companies who survive decades and centuries are not the ones that had the most money or the best something. They were just the most adaptable. That's just like in nature's own evolution in biology. So it stands in business as well. The companies are most adaptable that can quickly pivot when reality changes, when marketing changes, when technology changes. Those are the ones that are going to adapt. We saw this in COVID. We saw this for those of us old enough. Remember the 2008 crisis. Many companies came out of that market slump, and many strong companies are going to come out of the current downturn economy. You have to be adaptable. I like asking every candidate that I interview, like, where do they keep up to date with their profession and their craft? Which blogs do they read? Which newsletters do they subscribe to? Which podcast they recently listened to, or which business book they recently read that left a mark? And I don't care which book it is, but if they're hard pressed to find any book or blog or podcast that they listened to in the last 6 months, that's a warning sign for me that they're kind of stuck in their ways, and they either think they know everything, or they're too lazy to learn something new, or they don't see the need for it, whatever the reason is. I want something who can tell me, like, what's the latest and the greatest in their craft. What are the upcoming trends? What are the new technologies? What are the best operators doing and talking about right now? Otherwise, how are you going to stay ahead?
That's a great nugget. And I think there's so many different use cases for it, obviously within the kind of hiring and talent process, of course. But I think also with your vendors too, that'd be an interesting way to position it too. If you're speaking to a rep at a given vendor you're exploring and asking them that question to see how educated they are on the market versus just pushing their product. I never considered that, but that's a good one.
Let me know how that works out.
And with just a couple minutes left, there are a few more questions, but maybe I can pivot over to one that I wanted to end with both of you all. And it's kind of just a wrap up for all of us, but Amnon, maybe I could have you go first. What is the one single takeaway that you want the audience to leave with today from our chat?
I'll talk to the CTO again, the CTOs out there. It's just the fact that we're talking here, not about the next technology or where the world is going and what AI will do and all of that. We're talking about the boring stuff. How do you run a procurement process correctly? How you measure ROI? How you deal with your CFO? How much money, build versus buy? Should you spend money on that versus that? I found these things fascinating. I think this is most of what I need to do as a CTO. That's my job. Yes, I have this little part that I always need to keep up to date with the next technology and obviously innovate and build my stuff. But I'm running a business first and foremost, and or helping the part of the executive team that runs this business. And we need to think much more holistically about that. And it starts with the dollars. You get a certain amount of resources, money from your investors typically, and you need to bring it to a certain valuation and then grow the company. And you have to start from there. You can't just do stay in your comfort zone, which is doing innovative and fun technology stuff. So that's my takeaway to all the CTOs out there listening.
That's great. And Udi, maybe you could speak to the CMOs. If you could distill down one takeaway from our chat today, what would that be?
That is that the CFO and procurement and everyone in between are your friends. They're not your enemies. They're not against you, and you need to learn how to partner with them as true partners. They are trying to get in your team's hands all the tools that they need to succeed. They're not going against you. You need to understand how they are thinking, how they are KPI'd, and work with them to make it easy for them to help you get the tools that you need as quickly as you can. And when it works, it's magic.
I love it. That's great. I'll have to take that clip and send it to your CFO.
I think you'll agree. We get along pretty well.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for taking the time to chat with me today and to talk through this topic. And everyone that joined us, thank you all for carving some time out to listen. I hope you walked away with some insightful nuggets and learnings and enjoyed our chat today. We'll follow up with a recording to everyone, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. So thank you all.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Super fun. Thanks.
Bye.